Your thoughts on whether it's right to confront fare dodgers if you see them on trains, tubes, etc. 0207 862 2222. Robert Jenrick is Shadow Justice Secretary, and he appears to have been doing just that in a social media video posted yesterday. Have a look.
Excuse me, do you think it's all right not to pay? Seriously, why do you go back through the barrier and pay? Do you want to go back and pay like everybody else? Do you think it's all right not to pay? Why don't you go back and pay? You can say as much as you want, but everyone else has to pay. What, are you carrying a knife, do you say? Should we go over here to these guys here? Excuse me, gents.
Hello.
You're on camera, mate, you banged to rights.
Just step to the side and...
All right, thanks very much, guys. It's the same with bike theft, phone theft, tool theft, shoplifting, drugs in town centres, weird Turkish barber shops. It's all chipping away at society. The state needs to reassert itself and go after lawbreakers.
Well, the Union for British Transport Police, after that video came out, condemned Mr. Jenrick for playing the hero, and it said police need more funding, not performative interventions laced with bizarre and offensive commentary. So I don't know quite what the offensive commentary was there, but anyway, why did you do it then, Robert Jenrick?
Hi, Jeremy. Well, good morning. Well, I was fed up. I saw people, when I was down in London, skipping through the barriers, not paying for their fares, and it's actually happening all over the country. I think there was a YouGov poll that showed that 79% of people had seen somebody fare dodging. The stats of TfL themselves show that 1 in 25 journeys are not paid for. It's costing the public £130 million at least every year. And it's probably a lot more than that, judging by what I saw at Stratford Station when I stood there for an hour and the reaction to this video that's now been viewed 10 million times. It suggests this is a big problem. And I think law-abiding, fare-paying people just feel silly. They feel foolish that they're paying on the way to work, to school, to college, shopping, whatever it might be. And then they're watching these other people, admittedly a minority, but nonetheless a large number of people not paying, and that's wrong.
Would you do this, what Robert's done, Jeffrey?
I wouldn't have the courage to do it. I was amazed when one of them said he had a knife.
Yeah, he did.
Did he say? Because I couldn't hear what he said. That you responded.
He kind of mumbled under his breath that he had a knife and was telling me to back off.
But I, like you, Robert, I've seen people who very cleverly get directly behind someone. They wait for them and then whoop, they're through.
That's right.
I remember
seen that.
Mrs. Thatcher's press secretary, Bernard Ingham, chased after someone and brought them down in the 80s.
Bernard, braver than you.
I didn't do that.
Now, Gemma had a strange expression during that. I don't think you approved of it. Did you?
I think it's highlighted an issue. Why are Turkish barbershops weird?
Because there's just such a vast number of them cropping up now, and there's a link between some of them, not all of them obviously, but some of them, and money laundering, criminality. I mean, there's a story the other day of a small town in Wales, 6,000 or 7,000 inhabitants. They've now got 14 Turkish barbershops. I mean, there's obviously something going on.
So I'm going to raise my hand here and say
There's not demand for 14
The first time I heard about this,
town.
there was a speech by Richard Tice, who's the deputy leader of Reform, and he suddenly lit up about Turkish barbershops. And I thought, how can you tell, going past a barbershop, looking in the window, that there's money laundering going on in there?
Now, obviously, many of them are perfectly legitimate. I'm not casting aspersions on all Turkish barbershops. I've used them myself, but there is a link between some of them and money laundering, illegal.
Well, there we
go in and paint over their murals.
Well, 14 in a small town.
You can't just tease him. You've got to explain the reference.
It was a little bit of a jab when you were in government and you had ordered people to paint over some murals because they might be too welcoming to children.
It was in an asylum centre and there were murals of Disney figures.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this was an incident some time ago. It came about because I don't think it's right that you've got all of these young adults coming into our country on small boats and posing as children. I think that puts a massive risk to our own kids. And there's been terrible incidents. I mean, there was one in Bournemouth who went on to kill someone when they were in foster care and in a primary school. Well, unfortunately, there's actually quite a lot of incidents, not all as serious as that, thankfully, but there's a lot of incidents. And so I think when these young adults who are posing as children come into the country...
The majority of children
they
are children.
be treated properly as in a law enforcement environment, and we've got to weed out those people.
All right, because you're here and it's always good to have people in the studio, I've got to ask whether you're on some kind of leadership bid here, because I don't think I've ever seen a politician go and try and take down fare dodgers. Has this started early, this leadership?
Wait a moment. Let's be fair. If you're in opposition, every member of the opposition front bench should be doing everything to remove the government. And the idea that someone actually does that and has the courage to do that is being criticised is foolish. We need an opposition.
I didn't say foolish.
We need an opposition that works to get rid of the government.
Well, let's put it another way. The Tories are on 19%. Kemi Badenoch isn't registering in any way, so far as I can tell. Mr. Jenrick is the second choice, it seems to me. Are you prepping yourself here?
No, absolutely not. Look, the way I look at it is that as a politician, you can do speeches, you can do questions in Parliament, you can write columns for newspapers, and all of that is part of my job, and I do that as well. But you can also take your suit off, get out of Westminster, and try and get something done. You can shame the authorities into action, and this has proven to be a case in point. I hope that if Sadiq Khan has been listening to the massive groundswell of public opinion over the last 24 hours, he's going to get his enforcement officers out on the tube.
Let's take some calls. I want to see what our callers think of and do ask your questions to Mr. Jenrick. Jerry in Devon, beautiful Devon. Hello, Jerry.
Hello there.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to. I mean, the lady I spoke to on the phone before asked if I would personally be stopping fare dodgers, and I think as the trade union member and as London Transport said, they definitely don't want people getting involved in sort of cosplay vigilantism, totally performative, obviously on Mr. Jenrick's part. I'm not actually.
You wouldn't. So wait a minute, if you were on the train and you saw someone dodge the fare and they sit down next to you, you wouldn't say anything to them?
No, I wouldn't. I'll be honest. I used to bunk the fare. I'm probably from the age of 10 to 16, 17, 18, I was always lifting in the middle of London. I used to bunk the fare myself all the time. You know, I stopped doing it later on when I could afford to do it. I'm not saying that's the right
Robert,
thing
what would you say to Jerry?
Well, firstly, I'm not encouraging members of the public to go and accost people out on the tube, although I do think there are some settings where law-abiding people probably should speak up. I mean, if you see somebody chucking litter on the floor, well, why not actually say something? Why is it always the police or the local council officers who have to do it? But what I think is, I subscribe to this broken windows idea that if small, seemingly innocuous things are allowed to get out of hand, more and more people start to do them.
We know. I think we all know the broken windows.
That's why I think it is important.
But can I ask?
I don't think it is. If I just finish the point, Jerry, I think it's important that you do tackle these small things, because one thing leads to another, and over time it chips away at society. And if you think about graffiti, shoplifting, mobile phone theft, these things add up. And I think a lot of people in the country right now think that the public realm, the places that we all live and work in, are being diminished as a result.
Could I ask Mr. Jenrick, so if you think this is, we all know the Rudy Giuliani theory of the broken windows, etc., but do you think someone like yourself, who personally assisted someone like Richard Desmond, a Tory party donor, to evade £50 million worth in tax, who had to admit to doing so, do you think that's the right person to be?
Again, we're in quite a kind of narrow reference. I do know the story. You sat next to him at a dinner. You had a conversation. You had to apologise for it.
Yeah, this is something that happened some time ago where somebody sat next to me at a dinner. They asked me about property development. Nothing inappropriate happened. It was all looked into at the time, and there was found to be no case to answer. My interest back then, when I was housing secretary, was to get homes built, and I still believe that as strongly today. In fact, that development ended up getting signed off a couple of years later by the council in Tower Hamlets, and ultimately not stopped by the Labour government. So it's important to get homes built.
Let's stick on fare dodging if we can. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Jerry. Jamie in Somerset. What's your thought for Robert Jenrick?
Well, I think, if I'm honest, as I was saying to one of the researchers or one of the producers, at the end of the day, I never dodged fed when I was a kid. I mean, I'm 32 now, but I still think, if people, within reason, I wouldn't necessarily cost the fare dodger, but within reason, I'd get, like, if there was a policeman around or something like that, I'd get hold of the policeman and say, oh, that person's not paid for their ticket, that kind of thing. I wouldn't necessarily cost them or anything like that. But at the end of the day, if they're not paying for their ticket and they're dodging their fare, then it's down to the taxpayers to fork out money to kind of, to suffer the consequences of that.
Thank you, Jamie. Liz in Hertfordshire, hi.
Hi.
What do you think, Liz?
I just wanted to say that my daughter-in-law actually works for Transport for London, and she sees it all the time, as do I when I use the Underground. And because she's a very small person, and my granddaughter is as well, when they go through the barriers, these guys wait to push through after them because they're very small and they can get through the gate. But she tells me that London Transport tell their people who work there that they're not to tackle these people, that they're to let them go because there might be violence involved. So they know this, which is why they all hang around doing it. If there's no consequence, then, that's what you're up against.
But I'm trying to work out from Robert whether you think we have a duty to do something. Because I know you say not encouraging people, but surely the implication of your film is we should be getting stuck in a bit here.
Well, I want the enforcement officers to be taking action. Of course, they've got to protect themselves. I don't want anyone to get harmed. And if you're on your own at a station, I'm not expecting, the caller's daughter to go out and tackle somebody. But the station I was at Stratford, there were 8 officers stood by one of the exits, not doing a great deal. In fact, there was one officer stood feet up, I think they were on the video, feet up, checking their phone, whilst the gate was actually wide open, people just coming in and out, not tapping in and out. Presumably some of those people weren't paying. That's just a farce, isn't it?
I think they've solved it in Washington. They've just changed all the barriers so you can't jump over them. So that would obviously be a huge cost. So they'd have to weigh up, is it worth doing that? Could TfL afford to do it and then save the money in the long term?
Should there be a more serious fine, Robert? Do you think £100 is not enough?
I think you could have bigger fines, but it was also about prosecutions. The number of people being prosecuted has fallen very significantly. I think it's halved since COVID.
Oh, the courts
And so
cope.
what Sadiq Khan could do as chair of TfL is get prosecutions back up. So when you catch people, they actually get prosecuted, and then there'll be a sense of jeopardy. At the moment, people obviously just feel they can get away with it.
Okay.
No one's going to accost them. If they do, very unlikely they're ever going to get prosecuted.
You need police to come along, though, to the scene as well. And we're just completely short-staffed in terms of police officers. And where would you rather a police officer be? That's the problem, isn't it?
Well, as I say, when I was at the station, there were 8 officers. So
But are they what, TfL people or police?
They were TfL enforcement officers.
Right, but don't they have to, if they want to actually prosecute, don't they have to get a police officer to come along as well?
Well, I think the enforcement officers are able to take detail, to give fines, to take action, and they weren't doing that in this case. So I completely appreciate that there may be manpower issues, but it didn't seem to be the case at the station that I was at.
And OK, let's go to Sandra in London. Hi, Sandra, are you there? No, Tam yes, you're there. Hi.
Hello. Yeah, I mean, me personally, I wouldn't actually confront a fare dodger. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't confront a fare dodger. And the reason why I wouldn't, because I feel that there are more important things in life to actually go after, like the government is stealing from us, the public, hand over fist. They are increasing parking fines. There was a new something on the telly this just last week talking about putting up parking fines. Why would you want to put parking fines up? Because you have recurrent people. The cost of living is high. People actually can't afford it. I would rather that chap, sorry, I don't remember your name.
Mr. Jenrick,
to actually go and campaign about what the government's doing. If they're making us poor, cost of living's gone up, everybody do that. Campaign for that. Because that is, if you do that, people can afford it. They probably might not fare dodge.
Well,
who's going to do that? I mean...
All right, let's put that to him, that it's a bit of a novelty move, this.
Look, I don't agree with that. I do campaign on those other issues, tax rises, for example, what's happening with the economy right now. But I think these small things actually add up to something much bigger. And taken together, the fact that there's now an epidemic in shoplifting in the country, the fact that acquisitive crime, like having your mobile phone nicked, is rising dramatically. These have a very detrimental effect on people's lives. And sometimes, particularly politicians and people in Westminster, think that things like this aren't significant, but they are. I mean, I've taken up tradesmen's vans being broken into, for example, and their tools nicked. I've actually been written to by tradesmen who thought about killing themselves after they woke up in the morning and found their business was destroyed. So some of these things that are labelled as minor crimes actually are not.
Minor.
They're nothing like that. They're very significant.
And in my lifetime, you've seen signs on the back of cars saying there's nothing valuable in this. And I look at that and think, what a sad...
Well...
I watched a 1952 film, I'm that old. I love black and white movies, and I watched a 1952 film the other day, and James Stewart, a great actor, opened his own car without a key and opened his own front door without a key in 1952.
And had he been burgled?
Well, what the film showed What
I know,
film
yeah.
showed,
Got it.
Jeremy, was
Got
that
it.
was the attitude at the time.
Of course.
And what Robert is trying to say, if you let these things run away,
All right,
just get
but
worse
then,
and
but
worse.
then we get to the heart of it, Robert, and this is for your party. Is at what point will the Conservative Party give the country a full apology for not doing any of this when they were in power?
Well, look, I've probably more than anyone in the current Conservative Party been painfully honest about the mistakes that we made in office. At the end of the day, I resigned from the last Conservative cabinet because I felt we were making the wrong calls on immigration. So I think it is important, to be honest, to say that we got things wrong, to listen to the public, and then over time you can begin to win back people's trust.
But part of it was resources. You cut policing numbers, and we have now areas of the country where they have never solved a single burglary.
Well,
we have parts of the country.
Police numbers did actually end up being at a record high at the end, but you're right to say in the early days and the coalition government, the numbers were cut. I don't think that was the right decision. It ended up leading to a loss of very experienced officers that we needed to have out on the beat. The problem we see today is these lower level crimes are rapidly rising, particularly in places like London. And you've got to have a concerted effort to do that. You've seen in other cities around the world what happens if you don't take action. You know, there's US cities where crime has really got out of control now. I don't want to see that happening in our country. So that's why I think you need a big push by this government, by Sadiq Khan, the mayor, to really bear down on knife crime, mobile phone theft, shoplifting. There is a sense that some of these things are being almost decriminalised right now in the country. So I want to see an effort by the police and enforcement authorities. I want to see more people going to jail and for longer for these crimes.
They're full.
At the moment, the government is doing precisely the opposite of that. They're actually about to scrap sentences of 12 months or less.
Because you
so
didn't
you'll
build
never
any
go to jail
prisons.
for things like shoplifting, burglary, theft. That's
Gemma.
wrong.
The Conservatives didn't build any prisons.
Well, we didn't build enough prisons, but there are other answers. There's 10,500 now, foreign national offenders in our prisons. So let's start by getting the foreign criminals out of our prisons, deport those from the country. Let's get the court sitting round the clock. So you've got 17,000 people in prison on remand, awaiting their day in court.
Yes.
If we fix those two problems alone, we'd be able to solve this. At the moment, the government are reaching
Everything
for the easy
needs
lever
solving
of
because
letting...
you ran everything down and bankrupted the country and left us with a deficit of £2 trillion.
Well, we actually left the economy as the fastest growing in the G7. What's happened since then is
Doesn't feel like it.
Well, Rachel Reeves
Doesn't feel like it for anyone who's not a
talking the economy
multi-millionaire.
down.
And if you look at who is actually feeling the benefits of that, it is a tiny proportion of society.
Okay, let's go to Tam in Manchester. Hi, Tam.
Hi, good morning to you, Jeremy.
What do you make of this intervening on fare dodgers?
Well, I'll turn it on its head, Jeremy, because I think Mr. Jenrick there, it was a publicity stunt for him to get his ratings up. Yeah, in the mould of what Mr. Farage is doing at the minute. I'd like to ask Mr. Jenrick a question.
Sure, go
Does
ahead.
he use public transport at all?
Yeah, I use it all the time.
Do you pay for it?
I do, like
Do
most
you
people.
claim it
do.
back on expenses?
No.
Are you sure about that?
Well, if you want to know the details, MPs do charge for their journeys to and from their constituencies. So if I catch the train up north to my constituency or back down, then yeah, I charge that to the expenses in the normal way. But no, if I use the tube or the bus,
Why?
then I don't do that.
If someone's commuting to their work in and out of London or Edinburgh or Glasgow or wherever, they pay that out of their salaries. They don't claim it back off the bosses.
Well, I think it's quite normal, actually, for people who have jobs in two centres to charge their employer for the travel between the two. And that's what MPs do if they travel from their constituency down to London or vice versa.
I think this is partly true, listening to the accent, which I love. This is partly true because if you're the Member of Parliament for Westminster, you could walk to work. But if you're the Member of Parliament for Glasgow, it's a long journey. Why should they be treated differently?
Okay, Tam, thank you. Thanks for your calls on this. Thank you, Robert Jenrick, for coming in.
Thank you.
And later it's the papers and everything else. Find out about the NHS rolling out a brand new cancer test.